Larry Reed, what did you think about that?
Well, I wanted to ask her something before she left, but she's
Oh,
probably
Gene, are
already
you still
gone now.
there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Because she's like the grief guru. And I mean, because when it comes to, well, I just made a post because I'm working and participating all at the same darn time.
That's right.
I was just posting and updating my audience there about something that the governor had just passed here in Georgia. And I'm pretty sure we're probably going to see this, especially what our president has said surrounding the coronavirus. The governor of Georgia announced that he is not shutting down churches, but he is leaving it up to the discretion of the pastors. But he is asking them to keep proper distance and to take precautions. And so I was asking the audience, what is it that their governor is saying, or what the mayor is saying in their area? With things of this nature happening, being that we are seeing several bishops die, pastors who attended a funeral, a Kojic funeral, and many have contracted the cora, is what I call it, the cora, and some catching it, and potentially their life could be at stake now. There's probably going to be a whole lot of church people that get sick or pass. So as relates to the written judgments in the book, it said that there will be loved ones passing before their time. So okay, I just lost somebody, someone is dead, I mean, overnight. Speak to that.
Wow. Well, you got to learn how to grieve. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing, because what I've discovered is mostly people either try to stuff it down or they become hysterical. I think it's important to experience what you're experiencing. It's absolutely requisite. If you try to resist it, it's only going to get worse. You express your grief. And there's different ways.
Okay, we say express it. Okay, so I have a friend who had like a mother figure to die. Since then, they've been struggling to get all of their senses back, it seems as though. And they've picked up different habits to cope that are, in my opinion, are injurious to their person. And that may happen being that what is going on with the coronavirus. So we say express your grief. What
Yeah, well, see, that's the problem. When you don't express it, you start doing what they call coping mechanisms.
Okay.
You get bad habits. Some people go to drugs, some get into sexual addiction. I mean, listen, the communication has to get out. If you don't get the communication out, I miss you, or I hate you died, or why didn't you tell me you were sick? That stuff turns into poison. You've got to figure. That's why the work on grief is so important. We've done a couple of conversations in the church about it, and churches are an excellent place to be able to help folks be able to get what they need. And I'm not just talking about grief counseling. I'm talking about grief counseling that includes how to appropriately grieve in a way that works. Because what would happen if you grieve properly, Larry, there'd only be one result: the gift of what happened. There's a gift in there, but you can't see the gift if you're stuffing down the grief. And you can contribute it to others.
Got it. And I knew you could definitely answer that question. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
I want to see if I can bring Prophetess Nyakia. Let me see, can I bring her to the panel for a moment? I'll see if she can be able to talk. And let's see if she is able to. Okay, Prophetess Nyakia, are you there?
God bless you, Master Prophet. How are you doing? And
doing great.
Good to see you all.
Well, it's good to be able to hear you. I don't see you, but I can hear you.
Yes, I'm not in a space that I can be seen. like
I
that.
got you. Listen, I can appreciate that. Tell the people what it is that you do, Prophetess Nyakia.
Yes, I'm a licensed mental health counselor.
And what would you like to say about grief?
Just to add to the conversation, grief, unprocessed in a healthy manner, as we're speaking of, can lead individuals down to major roads of destruction and rob them from the life that God had destined them to have. So we do want to be sure to, as Coach Jean Lloyd wonderfully shared with us, is that we do want to get support with by health professionals that can assist us through the grieving process. Because as it stands now, we are grieving different types of loss. Aside from actual death, people are grieving the loss of routines, family dynamic, the shifts. There's a lot of grieving that's happening in our world today, and we have to be aware of it so that we can express it and process it in a proper fashion. Master Prophet.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let me see if I can bring Prophetess Cheryl Clark. Let me see if she can be able to speak. And are a lot of people experiencing a lot of grief now with all of these new situations that are coming up in people's lives right now?
Yes, Master Prophet. As I was sharing on our previous conference call, I've seen an uptick in many people relapsing and choosing to go into their addictive behaviors. And some people are being introduced to them, trying to cope with what they're experiencing. And some people are not knowing what they're experiencing. So there's still that layer of shock and denial, and just trying to find a little bit of relief and not recognizing that they're introducing themselves to behaviors that if gone uninterrupted will continue to carry them down a pathway that can lead down to self-destruct. That's the Prophet.
Okay, Prophet Cheryl, what would you like to say about this? Well, first of all, tell the people what it is that you do.
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we hear you well and we see you well.
Oh, great. Well, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also work with individuals, couples, families, and going through transitions of time of their lives. That's important. And it's a great share. Coach Jean Lloyd, as usual, has really did a tremendous job helping transition people into the situation of what's going on. Coping, like Sister Jean Lloyd said, is a very, very poignant time when people have to go through stages of grief that we've been talking a lot about in regards to what people kind of go through. And those 5 stages of grief, if I may, Your Grace, give that to the people. And so,
sure.
The first one, and it doesn't necessarily have to go in this manner. So the first one we go through is it's the stage of denial. Why is this happening? I don't understand why it's happening. The next stage that we go through is anger. Like, I don't understand why. And you get mad. Bargaining is another stage of it. And then also we get down to the fact of when you start bargaining with those type of things, that's really, really a portion, like you get, okay, and then you get deep down in depression. That's another stage. And then you move into acceptance. But that doesn't happen unless you reach out for some type of support. So that is what it is, what we're talking about. Are you reaching out for support? Are you reaching out for people when you need help and when you need a process of that? So back to you, Master Prophet.
I think, if I can interject, I think something that I haven't heard a whole lot of talk on is that bargaining stage. It's almost like, can you talk about that a little bit? I know you said it's in no particular order, but I want to understand that better.
Okay, so when you're bargaining, think about when you go to the store and you want to bargain, like, oh, this is $5, and they I can get that for a better price. So you start saying with God, the simple way, as Christians or whichever, like, why couldn't it be me, God? Why couldn't you take me? Or why couldn't this happen? Or why did it have to be so soon? Because especially when you go along with little children, people don't understand why that has to happen, right? or people doesn't understand why things happen and when it does. And Jean Lloyd said it so eloquently when she talked about when things happen to us, it's part of our journey. It's part of what that person needed to be. It is going to happen to them. And we're left here for a reason. What that reason is, we got to figure that out. And we usually figure that out through support. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes, it did.
I'm glad.
Okay.
Master Prophet.
Yes. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking to bring up these I'm looking to bring up one of the charts of the 5 stages of grief, other stages of grief, and
And that, I'm sorry, in that bargaining stage, is that where we can also see where people can go to their addictive habit. Of course, we see it in the depression stage, but if we're bargaining back and forth, say, okay, well, now that this has happened, now I'm going to do this, or because I've lost this over here, then let me pull closer to this here. Is that also a part of the bargaining? Well, God, since you done this, I'm going to do this, or God, um, uh, especially when they're about to die, or the possibility of death, because here they are on the table with COVID-19. God, if you heal them, then I will. It's all of that. Is that what you're saying, or I'm putting words in your mouth?
No, I think Prophet Nakia, she does this with a lot of substance abuse. Prophet Nakia, I think you do best to speak to this. Go ahead, Prophet Nakia.
Yes. Go ahead, Master Prophet.
And I also put up, it's not for just grief, but this here says 5 stages of grief in divorce, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, just so that people may be trying to write down those different stages. So go ahead. They're up on the screen right now if you can see it.
Yes, thank you, Your Grace. You're absolutely right. During many of these stages and going through these 5 stages, especially in the bargaining stage, people will want to turn to a substance or behavior, any type of behavior that can compromise their overall quality of life, trying to cope, or then offering a way out. So you're right, they will go, well, this is already happening, so I might as well just go ahead and do this, which was a situation with one of my clients, where he felt like, well, the world is coming to an end, so I might as well dive directly into my addiction. A place where I was able to find what he was calling a sense of control or peace, or trying to escape what he didn't want to really experience, which should go back to what we were talking about earlier, Coach Jean, which is an illusion. He wanted to create his own illusion, if you will, to avoid what he felt was discomfort and a sense of this new normal that we haven't embraced, because he was out of control and he couldn't feel like he was gaining himself or gaining control around him in this new environment that he was being forced to be in, if you will. Master Prophet.
All right. Okay. Anything else anybody want to say about this whole grief? Because would you say people are going through grief because maybe the children came in, they'll have to all of a sudden go from a parent to homeschooling, or that these type of things have had a major impact because they are experiencing some degree of loss?
Yes, Master Prophet. I had a parent tell me that, she said to me, I don't want to be home with my kids. She said, I don't want to do this, Naikia. And it was something she said, because of this adjustment. She works, she's working from home, she's having to focus on learning new subjects that are being reintroduced to subjects that she learned as a child, and having to help with homework and different things of that nature. And in that moment, she felt very much overwhelmed, and she didn't have a plan of how she was going to be able to do what was being requested or required of her at this season of her life. And so we had to talk through that. She really had to process it through and really get support around what was in her reach to do and how she could get through the task of doing what is going to have to be, which is she's going to have to make way and make room for what is, which is her children are going to be home and she's going to be home, homeschooling and working from the same space. So a lot of families are having to deal with being in close proximity to their families members, and that's very new for many of them. Master Prophet.
This is Pastor. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question, Ms. Pastor. And the conversation is so powerful, and it just made me think about, maybe I have a statement and coupled with a question. Because now that we're in this new normal that Master Prophet talked about, that we're in this new normal now, we have to know how to function and how to interact and how to just adjust. I think these types of conversations are so vital so that people all around the world don't feel like it's something far they're feeling. You know, some aren't used to having their children home all day. And so to hear the conversation that this is a normal reaction and how to adjust to that, I think is so valuable to people to be able to understand that, because otherwise you could think that something was critically wrong with you, and to try to suppress that or hide that or be in denial about that, would you say is more dangerous than having the conversation?
Oh, yes, because what happens is that when you're in denial stage, you're into this euphoria like it's not happening. So therefore, you either go deeper down, and that's why the stages are like they are, because when denial hits, it's no time stamped. So what happens when denial hits? That's why denial is number one, because when it strikes you, it's like my whole new normal, my routine is now messed up. My whole new, what am I supposed to do in this particular moment? And that's where it comes to the fact of, now I have to make sure that I have support. Some people don't know how to gain the support. So having those conversations is essential. I'm on a call every morning with a therapist. And today, 2 days ago, they made the liquor store an essential store to be open. And I said, wow. And she said, yes, because people were running out of wine. People were running out of, liquor. The bars are closed. And I said, thank God for the blood. Thank God for deliverance. Thank God for, making sure that we have a connection of support that others don't have, and people are running to the bottle. And this is where Prophetess Nakia portion comes in and said these groups that they were depending on is now virtual, and we have to keep them connected.
Wow. So I pulled up this one because you can see where it can go in a particular direction, but you can also see where it can cut across. So denial, I'll use, for instance, no more church. Oh my goodness, there's no way there can be no more church. I'm a pastor of the church. How I'm going to find income? I'm in isolation. I'm sitting in the dark. I got to figure something out. Then I might end up going into anger, or I can end up going directly into depression, Prophetess Cheryl.
Yes, exactly.
Go
ahead, you agree.
So I'm mad at the government. I'm mad at the Chinese folks. I says, from now on, we're not gonna eat no more Chinese food, or I'm upset with God or whatever. And then once I get that worked out and then I start bargaining. Well, maybe God has done this because he's teaching us all a lesson.
Your Grace, do you see the arrows in the middle? Do you see how it's going intertwined with each other?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's because that is what I said in the very beginning. It can go on the outside of like the yellow, the green, if you did a lot of work, like you went through the grief if you were on the call a couple of days ago, Archbishop talked about his grandchildren being home, and it was a struggle for him, and he went through the cycle. And this is because he's transformed in his thinking. He's been transformed in as an individual. Now, in the middle of the graph, how you see how the arrows are intersecting one another, It's because there's, first of all, it's no time stamped, and someone can hit depression first before hitting denial. Someone can hit anger first and then go into denial. So it can intercept each other. And timestamp, there is no grief timestamp. That's why being in the grief transformative seminar is important, because what Coach Jean Lloyd does is transform that grief into a powerful conversation.
Wow.
Master Prophet, may I add something to that as well?
Sure.
And this is why, you know, having these conversations, and I go back to what Prophet Janice was sharing, which was, we do need to have more of these conversations and people being able to plug in, because this is not just happening to one somebody. This is all of us. We are all being impacted. There's an impact that we all are experiencing, and so no one is by themselves. And so remaining connected, or for some people getting connected and getting in and being a part of these conversations is going to be very vital to individuals being able to ride the wave of what we're experiencing, being able to sustain themselves, but also being able to keep their families together and to keep their mental hygiene in the proper space. Master Prophet.
Wow. Okay. Do we have a couple of people that has their hands up or something? Let's see what we have here. Okay. Do we have, there's no hands up, are there, Prophetess Natasha?
No, Cynthia Clark looks like she's permitted to talk, but I don't see any hands.
Okay.
Okay. This is Pastor Audrey. May I make a comment, please?
Sure.
I'm fascinated at the quality. Let me say, when we talk about grief, one of the things I know from my experience, because I deal with corporate leaders and pastors, I think what I'm hearing all of you say is we've got to learn how to tell the truth and be honest with ourselves first about what it is we're really feeling. And I think sometimes in church, we come to church to mask how we're really feeling. And maybe because we don't know where to go with what it is that we're feeling. I think also, I've always thought of grief as death until I learned that it could be death of your business. It could be death of your finances. And we get stuck. I think when I lost my father, I went right from denial to acceptance and had to come back through the whole cycle and realize I was all the things that I could not admit being a Christian and being a leader. So I think if we can, and I'd like to see a team like this come really and infiltrate our communities, the church, the youth centers, the parent groups, so that we can have a forum for how do we learn to tell the truth. This is what I'm really feeling, and I don't know if I'm still going to be a Christian if I say I'm mad with God right now. And I got an attitude with you, so I'm taking it out on people. And it could be death of a relationship, death of everything. So this is powerful.
Master Prophet, may I say something?
Sure, go right ahead.
When Pastor Audrey was talking, just calling her pastor, where is all the pastors and bishops going to now have an opportunity to dump and to actually have a conversation? And like you said, Pastor Audrey, a true conversation about how you can now be a leader for your congregation and also take care of self-care. So being a leader in this time, a pastor, a bishop, or archbishop, and all of these things, you grieve too. So how do you go through that process when you don't have someone to go through? So you made a very poignant point, Pastor Audrey, about having to be able to be truthful and transparent when in times of these. That's the prophet.
Yeah, go ahead, Prophetess Audrey, because one of the things, self-care is important. And that's why when you look in the book of Acts, they always returned back or came back to their own company. So there's a value in being connected with your own company which helps with your, as Prophetess Nikeya stated, mental hygiene or your mental well-being.
Yeah, I like to say that in the passage that I deal with, much of my time, we're not just talking about a tax return. I've been in a situation where someone wanted to commit murder and suicide and said that they heard that I spoke to other pastors. But when I think what's going to happen now is we're now not going to be pulpit centered anymore. We're not coming to the church to hear the sermon, but we're coming to the church now to hear, what can I do? How can I help? And then the question is, who's helping you? And if we can come, I've had situations that once, you know, when the scripture says, and you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free, there's a freedom, but I think there's also that scary part. I don't want to tell anybody that I'm so angry right now. So I teach over it, I preach over it, I work over it. But once we realize, saying, listen, it's okay to be angry, tell the truth about where you are right now, then I think we can get help. I think if pastors and leaders begin to say, and I've heard this, I hate pastoring and don't want to do it anymore, but maybe they're stuck in the anger, and maybe we can help with the transition. I love that word that Jean Lloyd said about transforming. And let's figure out how can we transform, and then after we've helped ourselves, help somebody else.
Wow. Archbishop?
Yes, Prophetess Deborah.
Yeah, I think this is such a powerful, such an amazing conversation. And looking at these different stages of grief. But a lot of time, especially in our community, we don't want to get naked, for lack of a better word, to become transparent with one another. You know, I'm hurting, you know, I'm angry, you know, because to be angry, how dare you be angry? I mean, you're the pastor, you know, you're the bishop, you know, you're not supposed to have these type of feelings and stuff. But I think, like, if we can have more of these type of forums, especially for clergy, because I think once we can deal with clergy from the top, it'll flow down, that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be depressed, because they're finding out so many clergies are committing suicide because they don't have nowhere to turn. Because if they say something, then that means they don't have faith. If they say something, that means they don't trust God. But we have to come to a point, especially in our community and especially clergy, to begin to realize that we need help, and it's okay to reach outside and get professional help and stuff. I always go back when my dad made his transition. I thought I was losing my mind. I think in one instant that I had I went into depression. I had a breakdown, a mental breakdown, and didn't even know, because I kept doing what I only knew to do, to keep working. But thanks be to God, when I began to look up and began to see my world crumbling, I had to say, you know something, I need help. And I began to say, Lord, what should I do? I said, go get help. And I began to seek out professional help, a grief counselor, to help me walk through the season that I was in. And I thank God for it, because it made me a better person today. And there I can tell others that might be going through the same situations or challenges. I can tell other individuals, listen, go get professional help. I mean, it doesn't say anything about your spiritual walk or what you believe in, what you don't believe in. You need help to become a better person. Thank you, Master Prophet.
Master Prophet, may I add to that part?
Most definitely. Go right ahead, Prophetess Nikeya.
And it's so great that we're having this conversation in this form that we're having it, because when it comes down to seeking support and seeking help and getting counsel, when a pastor or any man or woman comes into the rooms, they're just them. They're not the roles that they also behold outside of the clinical space. So to know that you can have a safe space where you can just be yourself, is very refreshing for clients. And to be able to let your burdens down, where you can really process through the emotions that you're experiencing on so many different levels, whether it be that your family dynamic, or like I said, if you're clergy, those roles require or take so much of responsibility that it harnesses. And oftentimes people don't know if they're coming or going. And so to be able to be up close and honest with yourself is what's needed in order for a person to really show up and serve in the capacity that they really want to serve God's people. Master Prophet.
All right. I'm going to go to the Prophetic College webinar. Is there any questions in there? If you can ask it quickly before we change over and move over into different gears. But this is something that possibly need to be communicated. And let's see if there are any general questions here. Here's a general question. We have been talking about the virus and what we eat. Is there a plan to have Bishop Womack on the panel to speak about the food we are eating and can eat to stay safe? Yes, and I believe that Bishop Womack has a Wednesday class. Is that right, Prophetess Deborah?
Yes, it is. Wednesday and even sometime on Saturday or Sunday. Just go on his Facebook page and he'll pop up and let you know when he's having these amazing conversations about eating and what to do in this season.
Yes, and he'll give you some good advice. Now, it may take you a minute to go find the food if you can pronounce it, but but it would be good for you if you can pronounce it, amen, and locate it. Thank you. Okay. Okay, let me see. Okay, I don't think I see any questions coming up here. Okay. What did you say?
There's one hand raised. Pamela Allen.
Okay. A hand is raised. Okay, you want to bring him live.
Oh, let's see. Oh, okay. Okay, fantastic. My question is,
tell us your name and where you're from.
Prophetess Pamela Allen from Fairfax, Virginia.
Okay.
And my question is, are we going to be able, how many more times are we able to utilize this? This is a great conversation. I mean, very, very impactful. And so even myself, because I'll have children, because the ministry, children and women. So I would love to be able, to visit this type of it's not coming out my mouth right, like I'm thinking it right. But anyway, I would love to be able, I'd like to know, are we going to be able to be educated even the more with this grief process?
Most definitely, and that's what we've been talking about it on we've had about maybe 2 or 3 times where I had Prophetess Nyakia and Prophetess Cheryl Clark. Sometimes they were on different times. So the 24-hour revival, we'll be bringing it up quite often because it's a part of our world. There was supposed to be a grief seminar, which we've made available. We just did one back here in November, a few months ago, and we put it out and we were promoting it, but I think people made it out of something else and felt like they didn't need it because people feel like, I can handle grief. But we have it out there. It was supposed to be another seminar again next month, but we were going to cancel that. It was supposed to be an in-person one with Jean Lloyd. So if the people are willing to support that, we can easily make that happen on this platform and begin to do this. But there is a situation that we are experiencing in our community. Do any one of y'all council want to talk about the taboo around this kind of discussion or talking about what happened, especially with Black and Brown people, when we need to get into areas about mental health?
Go ahead, Prophet Nakia. She loves it.
So So we have to be able to really begin to welcome this conversation into our communities. And also it really first starts with welcoming this conversation into our household. To oftentimes we dismiss mental health. You know, we often want to say, you know, you've heard it before, oh, I'm just going to take it to my God, or the good Lord is going to see me through. He is. But having sound counsel is also a part of that process. So people don't want to be called crazy. And oftentimes, you know, I've had so many people who said, oh, I've thought about coming to counsel for many years, but I didn't want to come because I didn't want people to think I was crazy. And so we had to dismiss and speak to what counseling truly is. It's truly a conversation, and it allows for people to really get a hold of themselves and be able to understand what's really going on within their mental well-being. But it's true. As a community, we have to embrace the science of the mind and know that God is working through us, and that's one of the areas that God shows up. And if we do this as a community, you will see that people will be led into a space where their health can be restored. And then we will see building blocks happen again in our communities. And I truly believe that restoration will happen quicker than not. Minister Cheryl, would you like to speak to that too, Prophet Cheryl?
Yeah, I wanted to say in the Black and Brown community, it's a stereotype. If you bet not say nothing, you bet not say nothing, you bet not, or that's the conversation. So what happens is we live in a point of secret behind the closed doors of what happens. And what therapy does and what psychotherapy does, it gets you to the point of being able to get the skills that you need to be able to say what you need, to have it into conversation. And having it in conversation is what Archbishop is trying to say and get to us. If it's not in conversation, it does not exist. And a lot about psychotherapy is a lot of conversation. It's about exploring, going deeper. How did you get to where you are today? It's all about the man in the mirror. I love Pastor Deborah's transformation with grief. And when she spoke about it, and without being able, she was powerful to be able to now heal another person. And it's so great for, as a leader, as a pastor, to say, I too went to a therapist, and I too had to work through it my own. And I do love God, and I know God. However, I knew that the sciences out there was for me to be able to get through the next structure of my life. And if you were sick, you would go to your medical doctor. You just would. You just would. So going and breaking those stereotypes around therapy, stereotypes around counseling, psychotherapy, you want to say whatever you want to call it. It is necessary. And I think more of us are coming together now. There's been a surge. I don't know if you had a surge, Prophet Nakia, in the uptake in Black and Brown people coming to therapy, but I've had a surge in this particular time now.
Absolutely, I have as well.